Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert faced off in a debate last night with Trisha Calverese, who's the Democratic opponent of Lauren Boebert. So reminder, just super quickly, Boebert represents the 3rd district right now of Colorado. She's now trying to represent the 4th. She was scared she was going to lose in the 3rd, so she jumped over to the 4th. She did win the Republican primary. That was the hard obstacle. This is a pretty safe seat, but still it was interesting to see her called out on this debate stage, I guess you can sort of call it. So much. I'll just start playing clips and then give my response as we go through it. But this whole thing was weird. It was at a private golf course. Apparently, it doesn't seem Boebert really wants this on TV. Her last debate on TV didn't go particularly well. And we will look at Kyle Clark reacting to this, who's that incredible local anchor in Colorado. But first, let's just dive into the first clip.
What was DEVA was voting to lower costs of prescription drug medication. So I want to tell you a story, Representative Boebert. My dad was diagnosed with terminal kidney cancer, and I got 4 extra years of life with him, thanks to life-extending medication that his union retiree benefits covered. You voted to keep the medicine high and out of reach for millions of seniors that gave me 4 extra years of life with my father. That was a clear vote. You voted against it.
All right, can we just, first of all, Boebert's going to be super dishonest. Some solid points are going to be made by Trisha Calverese. I'll show you an ad that was dropped also trying to get Boebert to agree to another debate by the Calverese campaign. But this whole vibe is so off. If you'll split screen again, Jade, you're doing a debate that's supposed to be in the interest of the voting population. But to find these clips, we had to dig a lot because this wasn't broadcasted somewhere, from what I could tell. These are just phone clips, as you can tell from the audio quality, or Calverese's campaign may be recording some of this with a camera. And there's these nice photos behind them at this fancy private golf course with this tiny little crowd. Who is this for? And then they're both standing not looking at each other, and it's all just really weird. Very, very weird. But an important point made there by Calverese. Before playing more, here is a bit of a press release from Trisha Calverese. Trisha blasts Boebert for working against lowering the cost of critical prescription drugs like the ones that extended Trisha's father's life. A daughter of the district, Trisha moved back home last year to provide end-of-life care to her parents, who were both sick with cancer. Trisha's dad had been sick for years. He needed extremely expensive medicine. Trisha's family was lucky that he had great health insurance and that medication was covered under his plan, allowing Trisha to have 4 more years with her dad. On the debate stage, Trisha blasted Lauren Boebert for voting against allowing Medicare to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs like the ones that extended her father's life. Lauren Boebert sought to keep critical medicine out of reach for many seniors, forcing families to weigh taking on extreme medical debt or getting more time with their loved ones. And the insane costs of healthcare in the United States is something we need to be addressing. And one step in that direction was this action led by the Biden administration and then pushed for by Democrats, and Republicans universally voted against the Inflation Reduction Act that had this as a part of it. Next clip on the PACT Act. Think about this. Lauren Boebert tries to proclaim to be for veterans, but voted against the PACT Act, which expanded health coverage for veterans.
If you're going to take care of folks, like what about our veterans, Lauren? Because you're talking about lots of cuts and how to pay for things. I think if you're going to be America first, you can't put veterans last. So I do just want to point to your vote that you voted against care for veterans exposed to cancer-causing toxins and burn pits during war. So we definitely have different priorities, because I believe we should take care of our veterans, always. Are you done? Okay. So when it comes to our veterans, I have absolutely put them first. In my first year, we were in the minority, and unfortunately not all the legislation was great. And the omnibus bills have put in something really beautiful for our veterans. But again, not voting for something that we have 22 hours to read that's over 2,000 pages long.
When that bill first came up, I was in the minority, and amendments were closed on the House floor. I could not give a Colorado voice to the men and women who have served in our military on that legislation. Because
that was one piece of legislation. What about cuts to the VA? You proposed significant cuts to the VA that would hurt veterans, caregivers, their families. It would hurt homeless vets. It would hurt telehealth for vets. Don't sit here and tell us because you voted against one bill that you have somehow hurt veterans. Oh, no, thank you.
Ooh, brutal. Love to see it. Yeah, that's a tough one to justify voting against for sure. And she was one of the people who chose to. I think she listed off some reasons, take those for what you will, but I think what we see with people like the hardcore MAGA folks being Boebert, maybe in the lead up to her reelection, she might have tried to do some things for show to prove that she's not so hardline because of how tough the Republican primary got for her. But her record is one of someone who doesn't really even have to look at a bill to know that she's going to vote against it if that is a priority of Democrats, or if it's just something that Biden might be able to take credit for. Same thing with border legislation, that if Trump had proposed the exact same border security bill, she would have been for it. And because Biden did with that border security bill, or at least he was for it, it would have been a success of his in that sense. She voted or was opposed to it, spoke out against it. And then here with the PACT Act, I'm sure if you really got to the core of it, that's why she voted against the PACT Act, despite it being a very good piece of legislation and already making a difference for people. And then to back that up, here is from the same press release. Both of Trisha's grandfathers served in World War II. She grew up with a deep and personal respect for veterans and their families. On the debate stage today, Trisha held Lauren Boebert accountable for being one of the only handful of members of Congress to vote against the PACT Act. And it continues on there. But a true point. If you believe the information delivered on this show is valuable and you want to support in an easy, free way the work that we do, you can do it by clicking that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much. Back to the video. And then Ron Filipkowski was able to find some phone camera footage of Lauren Boebert after being called out for voting against and then trying to take credit for infrastructure projects. Oh gosh. This was her weak response.
Structure. Now, have I fought for and advocated for spending here? Absolutely. And local stakeholders will argue that the funding would not arrive had I not put in the work to ensure that it was a part of the legislation. Now, it's not up to me how that final bill comes up for passage. I will not put my yes vote to an omnibus bill or something that is not single subject. Well, that's up to you.
And then their follow-up, but yeah, we've covered this a bunch of times. Boebert just loved opposing things. If she got in her way, that legislation wouldn't have passed and her district wouldn't be getting funds or projects, and then trying to, as too many Republicans have, take credit for those projects. And if we're going to be really, really generous, you could advocate on behalf of something being in a bill. And the whole bill, because it's way more than just that one thing, is not something you're for, but you want to make sure, because you do think it's going to pass, that if it's going to get passed, I want to try to get something in for my district, and you could try there to be overly generous. But I do think it's important that on broader policy priorities that are popular to the American people, that are headed up by Democrats often, and then sometimes more moderate bipartisan Republicans will join the ranks there, that if someone opposes it and calls it massive failure like Lauren Boebert did with, I think it was the infrastructure bill or the Inflation Reduction Act, then they shouldn't be allowed to go get political benefits from the benefits that their constituents are seeing from those investments. And then here's a little report on this debate, and it seems Boebert's not super pumped about a second one.
Beginning of what I think is a job interview for all of our constituents. So I am calling on her to debate on TV at least twice. And if she doesn't like the venue that I proposed, we can be flexible. I don't believe we've heard back yet, but I trust that she's not going to duck it. I mean, she's a pretty tough contender, so I sincerely look forward to debating on TV with her soon.
I debate Democrats on a daily basis. It is my job. Right now, I am focused on Coloradans and how to improve the quality of their lives by allowing more freedom, allowing them to prosper and get government out of their way. That is my focus. My opponent had her debate today. Apparently, she's feeling that she didn't do very well if she's already looking for the second.
You're new to this district, so wouldn't it benefit the people in this district if you did have another debate televised?
I have been all over Colorado's 4th District and beyond. I traveled our entire state helping other candidates and listening to our stakeholders, our farmers, our ranchers, our energy workers, our hospital workers on a regular basis. And so I'm going to continue doing what I do best, and that's getting out on the road and in front of voters to hear from them.
Yeah, so what's really going on here? I don't think it's a sign that you think you did poorly for you to want a second debate. It could be, but I don't think it's necessarily a sign of that. You could think you did well and you want to levy more political damage. It seems we don't have much from this, as you can tell, but it seems Calverese probably should feel good about how it went. Can I just say one more time? The whole why is this happening in a private golf club? Hidden away from everybody? I'm confused. Unless I'm really missing. We tried to look, really missing, other than what was posted here. Can you split screen again? What is this setting? Look at our fancy debate where no one can see it. That is informative for the 16 people in the room. Great. But as we're having a cocktail party. But Boebert, what her thought process is she's going to, unfortunately, it's very, very likely she's going to win because of how red the district is now that she's the Republican nominee. And so why subject herself to that? And while I wish that she would, do you remember how the last televised debate went? It was brutal. Brutal. And whenever it's private, some of these clips will circulate, but the very fact that the quality isn't of a televised debate will cause most people to not really focus on it much, and thus there's not going to be as much of a viral sensation moment where, in the case of the last one, Kyle Clark brilliantly calls out Lauren Boebert, and it's a bigger political nightmare than just what's going on in her district when it's televised and then cut up into clips. But here is Kyle Clark with a few other clips from phones.
Lauren Boebert is again calling for the Environmental Protection Agency to be abolished. The Republican Congresswoman from Colorado debated her Democratic opponent, Trisha Calverese, today for the first and maybe only time in their race for the safest Republican seat in our congressional delegation. Boebert mixed in red meat messages like abolish the EPA with claims that she is bipartisan.
The legislation that I've introduced has largely been bipartisan. The bills that I have passed through the House and even signed into law, my Pueblo Jobs Act, have been bipartisan.
Boebert's claim that she has had bills, as in plural, signed into law is not true. She has had one, the Pueblo Jobs Act. Her claim that that bill was bipartisan is pretty misleading. It did not have a Democratic co-sponsor in the House before the time that it got rolled into a larger bill that did end up with Democratic support. So Trisha Calverese, she's a first-time candidate and a serious long shot in that heavily Republican district that goes from Douglas County out onto the Eastern Plains. She criticized Boebert in their debate today for voting against the PACT Act, extending medical coverage.
And then it goes into coverage that we already saw. But you might remember one of the moments that was brutal for Lauren Boebert in that first debate was her being asked, so what bills have you actually worked on that have gotten signed into law? Or how many? And she said, well, a lot. I'll just give you one example, the Pueblo Jobs Act. Okay, but what about any other thing in any other piece of broader legislation? Pueblo Jobs Act. That one was definitely one of the many of the one. Okay. And then you have this ad dropped by the Calverese campaign.
Is Lauren Boebert vaping? On November 5th.
Actually, I hate to do this to you all. Every time we've played clips from the theater, it's gotten our videos age restricted. I've even promised to play this for you. Let me cut Oh wait, yep, we'll go. We'll go here. Okay, and then age restrictions, and you have to be signed in. So then it caused a lot of people to end up having the video not shown to them. So let's just go here. Hopefully, none of the vulgarity will be in it.
Viewing in a theater, it was with workers. And hey, maybe you won't get kicked out this time. You're not scared, are you?
Yeah, so trying to get her to debate is the moral of that story on national, or not national, but on television in a way that more people would be able to see. But again, for Lauren Boebert, if you think you're going to win, you technically did a debate in that weird private setting, subjecting yourself to what would be a bunch of people dunking on you online after what would probably be a disastrous debate is not in Lauren Boebert's interest, unfortunately. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments, and if you want to support this show, you can do it. You can by clicking the join button below, and we're trying to raise money for Kamala Harris's campaign, so you can do that by clicking the link in the description of this video, and you'll find in the description box as well a survey for just a nugget of an idea that we have, and you can let us know your thoughts there.